Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? My name is Tony Rizzano, and you're listening to another episode of the world famous, the University Love, the best podcast in one, two, three galaxies. But, ladies and gentlemen, you and I would just call this show Online Marketing Moves. We are coming to you live today. Today is December the something and another 2025, ladies and gentlemen. Um, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we haven't done a lot of podcasts in the last couple of months. But that's all right. I'll make it up. I'll make it up to you in the future. Okay. Today we have a jam-packed show. I got a lot of news coming down the pipe soon, ladies and gentlemen. So I will explain everything. Not today, not tomorrow, but in January 2026, ladies and gentlemen, I will lay out the whole plan for the show. Ladies and gentlemen, we got to get this show off the ground, ladies and gentlemen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this show is already off the ground. But ladies and gentlemen, next year we will be in the top 10 um, best podcast in the world, because we are already the greatest podcast in the world. Okay, forget all the um forget all the nonsense, forget all the hanging around your friends and yucking it up about today's, what's going on in the news. Forget sports, forget politics. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to put money in your pocket. We're here to give you motivation and inspire. We are here to get you off the ground, okay, as far as marketing yourself, putting yourself out there, being the best version of you that you can be. Ladies and gents, why are we here for that? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever think about it, what makes somebody an expert? If you ever talk to people and you think, oh man, they know so much. If you ever think about people, you see people on TV, you see people here and there, you talk to people in real life, they really don't know what's going on, okay? You are more of an expert than you think you are, okay? And so I want everybody who listens to this podcast, I want everybody to get motivated, get fired up, and say, you know what? I can create things for myself. I can create content. I can create a business. I can make buku bucks, because in today's economy, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you noticed or not, but I remember Cash App, it started off at 4%. The interest rate at Cash App was 4%. Then it went to 3.75. Then it went to 3.5. Now it's 3.25. Ladies and gentlemen, the Trump administration, the economy is in the toilet. You cannot depend on your government to save your life. You cannot depend on the government to give you a fair living as you get older. Ladies and gentlemen, I will argue with anybody. As you get older, you need more. As you get older, you need more money. Okay? So I am going to tell my child, when she starts off, I am going to press on her that, saving and investing, forget saving, investing, it's good to save a few bucks, but you want to be investing. Um, and this is how it works. We all know how it works, but the younger you are, the younger you start the investing, the better off you will be. Okay, it's just a fact. It's not a big deal. It's just a fact. Okay. And so, ladies and gents, today we're going to talk about something that's very important. We are going to talk about knowing thyself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you today about football. Um, as you know, I moved to Atlanta in 2005. 2005, I moved to Atlanta, so I started watching. I used to be off on Sundays. Um, so I would watch, football. I would watch the Falcons, and I always thought the Falcons were a cool organization. I didn't really know much. I knew Dion and the whole too legit to quit team back in the early '90s. And I knew the Falcons was the middle of the road team. Nothing great, but nothing. They wasn't that terrible, but they were never like that good. They went to the Super Bowl once. And so I started watching the Falcons, and the Falcons, they got better and better and all this jazz. And I remember they were the number one seed in like 2009, something like that. 2008 or 2009, they was like the number one, number two seed. I remember they had a home game. It was going to be on Saturday night. They was going to play Green Bay. I remember, because I got off work at like 6. I drove home. I'm on the radio. They was playing. They was playing the song. They was playing a hype song. That's one great thing about living in Atlanta. The radio, it was banging. We was playing hype songs. Everybody was like, "We ready," and the whole city was like, "Ah." And I remember that game because Aaron Rodgers played probably one of the most perfect first halves. He demolished the Falcons in one half. It was like 30-0, something like that. Aaron Rodgers threw a if this was baseball, he would do a perfect game that first half, okay? So they blew the Falcons out. They dominated the Falcons. And I remember the Falcons were basically they were a run oriented play action. They ran the ball, set up the play action. Matt Ryan, he throw it, Roddy White, Tony Gonzalez, things like that. They had a formula. And I remember after that game, they did a lot. They traded a lot of picks to move up, and they got Julio Jones, Julio Jones is a magnificent football player. Okay, he's a wide receiver, but what the Falcons needed more than anything, and this is where the Falcons went wrong. And this is why you got to know thyself. Where the Falcons went wrong at, honestly, where they went wrong was instead of them, hey, you see this guy who just demolished y'all. We need more upfront muscle. Okay, the Falcons had a decent pass rush, but they never had the greatest pass rush. They had a good secondary, a hard hitting secondary, but in order for you to let the secondary really line up and hit people, you need a great up front. Because the better up front. If you have a nice up front defensive line, they can free up the linebackers. This is why Ray Lewis was so great. He had a great up front defensive line, so he was able to roam around for free. And if you have a great defensive line, it helps the secondary. It makes the secondary look better. So if you have if you have a good cover corner and you have a great defensive line, then that cover corner is going to look even better. Okay, it's just the way it is. This is know thyself. And so the Falcons they had a good offense. They got Julio Jones. They didn't boast up the offensive line. They didn't boast up the defensive line. The Falcons are a team that should have just stuck with the offensive formula, running the ball, play action. But no, they went all in. They had to get Julio Jones, try to get more offensive weapons. And the result was, crickets, crickets, crickets. And then I remember 2016, they finally got a good offensive line. They signed Alex Mack. And then so they had a great offensive line, a good quarterback, and they had weapons. And so they had a decent defensive. They had a decent. The defensive line was still, it was okay, but they had to get the lead. So because they was a smaller team, smaller defensive line team. So I say all this to say the Falcons that game, in 2008. The Falcons tried to change their whole lot. That they tried to change up the whole style, and they've been struggling ever since. They went to one Super Bowl. They blew another. They blew They blew a chance to go to the Super Bowl. They went to the Super Bowl. They blew that game, and they've been running. They've been going on this. They've been going on this offensive formula ever since, and it ain't been working. It don't work. And the reason why it does not work is because it's great to have offensive weapons, but if you don't have a good offensive line, and the Falcons have never really had the best offensive line, without the offensive line, it doesn't work. Without a defensive line to attack the quarterback when you have a nice lead, it does not work. And for the Falcons, they switched up the formula. The formula was going okay because they was getting to the playoffs. They let one game change the whole formula. They tried to be more like Green Bay, and we still haven't had any success, any championships, any hardware yet. And so I tell you all that, ladies and gentlemen, to say, know thyself. What the Falcons should be, I'm gonna tell you like this. What the Falcons should be, they should be a running team. We always have good running backs. We always have good running backs, speed running backs. They should have 2 or 3 running backs. They should have a massive offensive line that loves to run first. Okay. control the clock. You in the dome, control the clock. They should make their team to be more of a running team, a a a slow down. We're gonna run you out of the building. We're gonna get the lead. And our defensive line, they can be super quick. They don't have to be the heaviest. They can be super quick. And when it's time to because when you have the lead and the people the people got to throw the ball, the Falcons can just rush the quarterback with explosion. Okay, and that would be our formula. If I was the coach, the general manager for the Falcons, I would do that. The whole we need all these offensive weapons. Where has that gotten us? Nowhere. A bunch of offensive weapons and no engine. Uh, you got a body, you got four tires, and you got no engine. You got no offensive line. It does not work. Okay. And so you have to know your stuff. What do you want to do? What are you don't look at because a lot of times, I had a discussion with my homeboy. He owns a donut shop. He has a donut shop. And I remember he was one of the first ones to have the donut shop going. And now you see so many people with donut shops. And I'm like, hey man, what's up with that? What's up with them? All these people in these donut shops. He's like, hey man, they see an idea and they run with it. And we are more of a copycat society now than ever before. Okay, you remember when people was flipping houses, then everybody wanted to flip houses. You got to realize those people on TV that flipping houses, they make most of their money. They make most of their money from TV. They make most of their money from TV. It's cool to flip one house or two houses. Listen, man, trying to become a billionaire just because you see other people being billionaires, that's not a lot of people like to tell you, all you need this, that, and the other. Listen, you want to make money. You don't have to become super rich. You got to focus on what you can do. I don't expect to get a $100 million podcast deal. You know, I don't expect that. This show is not. I am not going to ever. I am a good host. I am a great host. Okay, I I can carry a conversation well. We have great ideas for the show. We do the show. I am never going to say anything that I really don't believe. Okay, I'm never going to be, bombastic. You can let your personality shine, but you know, of course, we all have to. We all have to. We are all actors. We all act in the world, because everybody, when you're at home, you are a different person than you are out in the public. Okay, your wife knows you best, probably. Your spouse probably knows you best. Your children know you best. People inside your house, they know you best. When you're alone, away from your spouse, you're even a different person. We are all different people outside of. So of course, when you are doing a show, you are being something that you know, not that you're, hey, I'm a full blown character. Yeah, you have to you put on, you add a little sauce into the you add a little extra sauce into the meal. I'm not saying you don't, but what I'm telling you is, we all know people that they are totally different than what they are. It's like the rapper who says, "I've been selling drugs. I've been selling drugs since 1990." Hope it's like, yeah, all right. I mean, it's all right, but if it works, it works. I mean, it's like I remember this year the Clips came out and they was like, "Oh, the Clips, blah blah blah. This is real rap." They still doing cocaine rap, man. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I'm not gonna listen to it. There's an audience for it. And hey, if you can do it, then do it. But what I'm telling you is, figure out what you want to do. Figure out where you want to go. And then start applying. Start doing it. Don't think, oh man, I gotta gather up three of my friends and we gotta talk about the subject of today, and we gotta laugh and giggle. You might not want to be a comedian. You might you might not want to key and ha ha on every episode. You might want to do crime series. You know how people more and more people do crime podcasts. Sorry about the noise. More and more people do crime podcasts because they're like, hey, crime podcasts, they sell. No, figure out what you want to do. Okay. That's the first thing, because the passion will come through. If you know, people have to believe in you first. Before people are not gonna buy from you if they don't believe in you. So if you don't believe what you got going on, ain't nobody else gonna believe that. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey man, people like to criticize Stephen A. Smith, and I don't watch First Take, I don't watch them sports shows, because it's all kind of dumb at this point. If you're a person that watches sports, I mean, you don't need, you you know, I mean, after a while, do you need somebody else's opinion on, hey, he shouldn't have missed that block? But anyway, but what I'm telling you is a lot of people, they see Stephen A. Smith and they like, why is this guy getting paid $20 million? Blah 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 blah. Hey, you get paid what you can negotiate, okay? And so you listen, you start creating content. You figure out what works for you. I know it's easier to just look and say what's working for them guys. Listen, if you want to talk about cleaning dog hair on your podcast, and that's what you want to talk about that, man. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be, the passion, your passion. I enjoy watching hockey. I don't talk about it on the podcast. I enjoy watching it. One of these days, maybe I could think about doing a podcast about hockey. You know, that would be cool, but for right now, I don't. Nah. I like to talk about marketing and, applying, hey, what's going on in the world with marketing and what can you do to stand out? Because, as a person, when I was younger, my younger self, I never really wanted to, stand out. It's like, hey, I don't mind being back here, but, after a while you realize, hey, man, to get where you want to go, if you really want to, you know, uh, make some cabbage. If you really want to, be seen, sometimes you have to toot your own horn a little bit. You have to say, "Hey, here I am." Yeah, even if you're at work, if you have a job and you're looking to get promoted, you have to stand out. You have to make yourself stand out. Okay, and you just can't sort of hide in the back and then say, "Why they not paying me more money?" They're not paying you more money because they don't know you are there. Okay, and that's just the way it is. So if you want to stand out, this is the podcast for you. Learn how to stand out, learn how to step out, learn how to separate amongst yourself from the crowd. You don't have to do a podcast. You don't have to be an investigative reporter to become a top tier podcast. You do not have to become Joe Rogan and talk a bunch of jibber jabber, a bunch of BS philosophies and all that jazz. There are plenty of ways to skin a fish. So there are plenty of ways to create content. There's more to life. There's more content than just travel content. There's more content than just, you know, pointing at the camera and reacting. There's a million ways you can go about it. There's a million ways you can get your name out here. And so you just have to become a little more media savvy. Because sometimes you might have the best. You might have the best information, but nobody's gonna know why. Because you ain't got no media presence. Okay, we all know. We all know restaurants that are overhyped. Why are they overhyped? Media creations. If you're a restaurant in New York, you're gonna get more publicity than a great restaurant in New Madrid, Missouri. Okay, it's just because the media is right there. And so if you own a restaurant in New Madrid, Missouri, you're gonna have to do a little more publicity to get your name out there. All right? Especially if you want to be a national brand. It's just the way it is. And that's all right. Okay. You don't have to, everybody doesn't have to live in New York City. Everybody doesn't have to live in San Francisco. Everybody doesn't have to live in Chicago. You can become popular no matter where you're at. So one thing I don't like about the NBA, they always act like there's only 3 cities. But now the in the last 20 years, places like Oklahoma City, San Antonio, they've won championships and they've been to multiple NBA finals. So Milwaukee won a championship. Come on now. So what I'm telling you is doesn't matter where you at. The internet is one good thing about the internet, doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter who you are. You can get going anytime, anywhere, any place at any day of the week. It's up to you. What do you want to do? So this show is a little inspirational today. Also, this show is to let you know, hey, you have a game plan. Do not deviate. Do not deviate from the game plan just because you see that somebody else is getting faster success. Listen, two of us go out. Two of us go out to Hollywood. Me and you go to Hollywood. Hey, it might take you 2 weeks to get an acting job. It might take me 2 months. We both, we both now are Hollywood actors. Okay, doesn't matter the timeline. Doesn't matter how long. We got there. It took you 2 weeks. Took me 2 months. What I'm telling you is, you create the content. It might take you 2 years. It might take somebody 2 weeks. The point is, keep creating the content. Make tweaks. But do you have to change the whole thing just because you see what somebody else is doing? Absolutely not. But ladies and gentlemen, I greatly appreciate you for listening to this episode. Listen, I've been a lot's been going on, ladies and gentlemen. I will clue you in on that in the future. But until tomorrow or until the next time, listen, we will definitely go back to being stable in 2026. But until tomorrow or the next time, my name is Tony Zano. I greatly appreciate you. I love you. I appreciate you. God bless. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. All that good stuff. Until next time. And as always, everybody, peace.